Do you wonder which tribe this person belonged to? A Naga of the Northeast India? No. A Dayak from the old Borneo? Nope. A Wa of the Yunnan province in China? Nope. An Igorot from the Cordillera of the Philippines? No. So which place does this beautiful folk belong to? This one. This place is where the people who have the strongest link to the Igorots and all Filipino tribes, the Malayans, the Indonesians, and also the Oceanians originate from. The Austronesian language they speak was spread into a very wide range, even reaching Madagascar, Easter Islands, and Hawaii. The most advanced and latest DNA study published by Larena Laboratory in Uppsala University concluded that the Igorots of the Cordillera Administrative Region of the northern Philippines are the ancestors of all non-Negrito Filipino tribes and also the Malayans, the Oceanians. This latest DNA study has shared the genes of the Igorots and also the Amis and the Atayal tribes of this island. They both share common genes to all the rest of the people within this map. But let's go back to the island, this island. And why did I call this video The Death of Formosa? Centuries ago, the indigenous people all around the world were just simply living. They hunt, they fish, they plant, they build their own houses and create their own clothing. They ruled their own land, their communities and civilizations. Then in history, starting in the 1400s, the year 1400s, the European imperialist colonization began to destroy every culture, destroy all these people, what they had done and what they had, their own land. Spain, Portugal, Britain, France, and the Netherlands explored and claimed lands and natural resources of the Americas as their own. They displaced, disestablished, enslaved, and massacred millions and millions of indigenous peoples of the Americas. Great Britain massacred the Aborigines of Australia to claim their land as their own since the 1700s, and they followed it up by owning New Zealand. The Netherlands and Britain claimed Borneo. Spain claimed the Philippines as their own in the mid-1500s and enslaved the Filipinos for more than 300 years. But once again, with the exception of the Igorots in the Cordilleras, because the Igorots had been fighting for their independence for the 300 plus years of Spanish rule in the Philippines. And so going back to this island remained peaceful. The diverse tribes who are living there were enjoying their living and their culture. Not until the year 1542. In 1542, the Portuguese sailors reached the islands. Upon seeing the island, exclaimed, "Ilha Formosa," that means a beautiful island. Since then, Formosa became the name of the island. In the 1620s, the Dutch and the Spanish arrived to the island. The Dutch group set up stations in the south, while the Spanish set theirs in the north. These two imperialist groups encouraged the Han Chinese people from the Fujian and Guangdong provinces in China to immigrate to Formosa because they could pay them with a very cheap labor in their workforce in planting rice, food production, and etc. That time was the beginning of interculture and intermarriages among the Han Chinese and the Formosan indigenous peoples. The 20-plus tribes in Formosa began to have their genes mixed up with Chinese genes. Later on in 1642, the Dutch were able to overpower the Spanish to claim solo ownership of the island. In 1662, a Chinese general named ᴇᴘɪ괱ᴅᴅᴇ and his army were able to defeat the Dutch, and the latter eventually left. ᴇᴘɪ괱ᴅᴅᴇ was loyal to the Chinese Ming dynasty, so ᴇᴘɪ괱ᴅᴅ established a kingdom he later called Kingdom of Dongning. He ruled Formosa until the rival of the Ming dynasty, which is the Qing dynasty, took over the island in 1683. The Qing dynasty ruled Formosa, and the Chinese name Taiwan was used instead of Formosa. On the 23rd of May 1895, the Qing dynasty ceded the island to the Japanese after their war and what became the very first Sino-Japanese war in history, fighting towards territories including Korea, Manchuria, Taiwan, and the Yellow Sea. They came up with the Treaty of Shimonoseki. Then the Republic of Formosa was established by the Taiwanese people in the struggle to create their own government. But the Republic of Formosa was short-lived, as it only ended in about 5 months as a result of the Japanese taking over the capital, Tainan. What came after was the Japanese imperial rule, which lasted 50 years between 1895 and 1945. During these periods, there were numbers of uprisings happened, done by the Aboriginal Formosan people. They fought fiercely and bravely, but Japan was just too advanced in their military. The indigenous people failed and was killed during the war. There's actually a very good movie about that, and the title of the movie is ᴇᴘɪ괱ᴅᴅᴇ. And I really recommend you this one. Go and watch it. It's worth it. Trust me. And after World War II, the Japanese handed Taiwan over the KMT-ROC, Nationalist Republic of China. Then Chairman Mao Zedong of the Communist won and defeated the Nationalist Party headed by Chiang Kai-shek. And so Chiang Kai-shek retreated to Taiwan and he ruled the island. He made it as the Republic of China. He set up a dictatorship where there was no democracy at all. He ruled Taiwan through a martial law until his death in 1975. Martial law was ended in 1987 when other political parties were elected. Up until today, Taiwan is a democratic, unitary, semi-presidential, constitutional republic. Basically, a land once lived by Formosans are now ruled by people that came from outside the island. In the 2000s, the Taiwanese government began recognizing the indigenous peoples, the Formosans, and gave them special rights like fundamental law of indigenous peoples, education, state law, regulations for the indigenous peoples, and many more. Taiwan government apologized to the indigenous people for the very first time in history in 2016 after being robbed of their own lands and generations of being forced aside and abused. Today, there are now 16 recognized indigenous tribes living in Taiwan. They are the Amis, Atayal, Paiwan, Bunun, Puyuma, Rukai, Tru, Saisiat, Yami, Tao, Kavalan, Truku, Sakisaya, Sedike, Laalua, and Kanakanavu. Their current total population is only 560,000, 2.38% of the whole Taiwan population, not even reaching a million. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the death of Formosa. Thank you everybody for watching. This is your Igorot guy, Freddy. I wish you goodwill. Let's be proud of our culture, our Austronesian culture, and our similarities in Asia. Thank you so much, and I will see you again on the next video. Cheers! In the Philippines, the arrival of Western music was not only by the radio, but the Americans themselves. They occupied the Philippines for 48 years after the 333 years of Spanish colonial period. Before the Americans, the Spaniards had long